I love this film. You guys, I'm so glad to be able to feature it in season 4 of POV Shorts, and so grateful to be able to chat with you both about it today. I want to take it back. I, of course, rewatched it in preparation for today's talk, and it still hits me every time, the emotional parts, but it also still hits me how much story, Tiffany, you pack into um, the 29 minutes. Talk to us about when you first went to Taiwan on this, unbelievable journey to find your mom's long lost mom. What that was like to set out on this seemingly impossible journey.
I mean, back in 2005, this is before Google was accessible to the public. There was no Google Maps. And so I think the driving force of all of this was my mom not knowing, not having answers. I think when we're young, we might take that for granted, to have access to information, to know our lineage, to know our family, to have them right there. And we take that for granted off the time. We, as kids, we probably don't even want to have them around us too much. So here my mother was, just didn't even have that choice, right? And I think, growing up, her not knowing and me asking her questions, and her not ever having a solid answer,
Mhm.
and if anything, finding ways to fill up some of those fragments with what she would be her truth that she needed to tell herself. So that's all I kind of knew and got out from my mom, growing up, was just little tidbits of fragmented memories of her remembering only darkness as a child before she like actually got adopted. She only just like everything was in at night, and we moved around, and last time I saw my siblings was in this cold prison cell with my father, and I don't know why we were there. And she had empathy for her father, and so I think that growing up, knowing that my mother had these questions but not really any
Mhm.
answers, and then asking her why she wouldn't go and seek out, and isn't she curious, and to see how that became kind of my mission, and also my
Mhm.
stubbornness to just like forge ahead and find that. So that's how the mission started, and it was really based on my stubbornness of needing to find that answer for her. And I don't think, I mean, I was hopeful, but
Mhm.
obviously I also knew that there was a possibility that all of this could be for nothing at the same time, but I just
Right.
wanted to try, you know. I was
Yeah, I mean,
terrified.
the footage from that time, that one scene where you show your mom's pain when you're having that family gathering, and she kind of breaks down. um it really strikes a chord with her sort of emotional state. But I really felt that it being so raw to her, even so long on, she really needed the vehicle of you to be able to kind of be her proxy. And it was amazing, like when we're looking back at you, going to Taiwan and having those moments before you find your grandmother. Those really struck me as like you kind of embodying a bit of um, the lost feelings that your mom had, even as you were, seeking your grandma. Can you talk about like even those moments while you were there and before you knew for sure that you were going to find her? I love the scene with the women helping you to find the
Oh, that was
ancestors,
hilarious. That was so
which was
funny.
really sweet. But you have these sort of quiet moments where it's like, oh, like she's not really sure if she's going to find her, and then how do you go home? So what was that like before you found
I,
grandma?
I think that was in partly why we wanted to film everything, right? Because
Mm,
even if we didn't find anything, that there would be this documentation that there was efforts and we weren't just
right.
goofing around in Taiwan. Um, and I have to say, like, every step getting closer, I just got more nervous,
Mm,
like, is this really actually happening? Like, I almost couldn't believe that it was just like all the pieces kind of falling into place, and all the people that wanted to help, and how much my very broken, brutal Mandarin that I was speaking like got that far. Like it's kind of surprising that it got me that far. Like I was able to like order a meal. Like that's how my extent of my language was, and to have the women and everyone kind of read between my lines and kind of really just see the intention that, you know, this was really an effort that I was trying to do for my mom. And I don't think
Yeah.
that they often see, you know, a Canadian girl coming to Taiwan with their broken Mandarin and asking to find their grandmother. I think that
No.
that's really rare for them. And so I think all of that kind of fell into my favor to be able to get it. And the truth is, what you don't see in the film is that when we found out the address, when I first got there, she wasn't there.
Ah.
She wasn't there. And so I was like, what? And the man who opened the door was like, she's at work. And I was like, grandma's at work? And like grandma to me is like the grandmother I have in Toronto who's like 80 and like
Right.
mahjong and dim sum. There's no
Right.
work,
Right.
right? So I'm like thinking, what? She's working. And he's like, come back at night. And so that's why you
Oh.
see me walk, because like, why would you decide to go find your grandmother at night? So like, you know,
Right.
so dramatic, right? But it's because I was waiting for her to come
To
back
get
home.
home from work.
And so,
Interesting.
and then, yeah, so all of it was for me, the discovery, the anticipation, the curiosity, also just kind of, I will say, like, feeling guilty that I was having this experience and not my mom.
And not your mom.
But
Mm.
in this weird way, I mean, I think that so like intergenerational trauma and the things that we experience and feel, I think that happen, some of it is just unexplainable in our lifetime, but definitely happened in our grandmothers and our ancestors. And what this fun fact of learning that I was possibly, you know, I existed, or a form of me existed in my grandmother's stomach before, you know, my mom was born, is like a very weird fact, but makes kind of a lot of sense. This almost like finding or seeing her, the
Hmm.
discovery of her is in this weird way discovering me and
Yourself,
discovering,
absolutely.
yeah.
So Priscilla, let's get you in. Have you been a part of the film journey from the beginning, or did you join later on? This has been
I
14 years in the making.
Yeah, so I joined much later on, and I'm so blessed to be part of the team. Funny story. I did meet Tiffany before she did her 2019 trip. And we were connected again after she had shot all the footage in 2019 and was in post-production. And I came on to help sort of like post supervise the post process, and I just haven't left since then. So really my journey starting was in post production, and has been, I mean, I've been supporting her in that process since then, and it, you know, it took like a year and a half, Tiffany. I forget like how long.
I want to say it's been longer, but it's
Yeah.
been, I would have to say, you know, with documentaries, as we all know, so much of
Right
it,
in the edit.
so much of the work is in post, really.
Yeah.
For
And
sure.
actually all the emotional support is really in post. You could shoot all the heck you want, but you really, the part where I feel like most filmmakers can relate to for a documentary specifically is you're on this rush and you're capturing, you're capturing. And it's only in the time when you're actually settled in post-production where you're like, the weight of it, the heaviness of it,
Right.
also your own trauma with it, also all the reflection of like, what am I doing?
Right.
And so to tell you the truth, I think it becomes the most important moment where you have a solid team, you know, with Priscilla on board. Like, I could not have done this by myself. There is no freaking way.
Well,
And I'm very,
no,
very,
that's a
very
lot of
blessed
years
that
of footage.
this, honestly, I don't think we would have finished. Like I tried to lock this movie like 5 different and to have that type of support is the way that we can move forward. I had 2 incredible editors, which are like therapists, because when you are making personal films, it's like you're constantly questioning like whether or not you're making that decision for story or to protect your own ego.
Yes.
Or to protect your own vulnerability of your stupid 21-year-old self acting a certain way, looking a certain way, or even the questions that you're asking yourself or the things that you're exposing, really, because it's like, this is family at the end of the day, this is for my mother.
Right.
You know, what is too much? What are the things that I could share? Because as you mentioned, there's a lot of story in there. And if I pick just one of those things, it could go down a deep rabbit hole that, you know.
No, for sure. And I wanted to talk about those decisions, and Priscilla, please weigh in as well. I in doing my rescreen for today's conversation, I took note of your opening, and with a film that spans this amount of time, I mean, you really could have opened a bunch of different ways. I'm curious as to why it was important to place it almost in present time, 2019, when Wendy had returned and had already been in contact with grandma for a while and reunited with her sisters, and was revisiting this moment, this specific place that held such importance in her childhood. Why open there?
We were so adamant on a particular opening of the film, and was it you, Priscilla? There was this like, oh, I love it, so beautiful, but there's something a little bit confusing. And then it was like, you try these little adjustments, right? So we actually had a very different opening for a good year and a half. The opening was always the same for a year and a half until like literally a week before we locked the picture. I just changed it completely, which is the opening of what you see. And it's so interesting because, again, I think that sometimes we get in our own way of telling the story that needs to be told. And I definitely got in my own way because we always knew that there was something weird or something confusing about opening the way we had before, which was actually
the fog.
The fog. Like that's how we had this opening scene, because in reality, there was this really long conversation that I had with my mom there. I brought her there. This was near my grandmother's house in Beito. And so we always had this opening. It just seemed like the natural place to open with the fog and the mist. And we loved it so much. But it was just not the story. Like it wasn't the context to the story of the playground, and it seemed like that was a natural place to open it as the prelude, but then to jump right into 2005 to the past in that way. There are so many places, and I have to tell you, like starting documentary in the feature form and then jumping into short form, I have to give so much love and respect to short documentaries to pack and to
please.
Like, it's different. It is different, and it's it's a craft that I feel like needs to get more love, because I
agree.
I don't understand. Like I was like, how do people do this? Like you really have to, you don't have time to build up something to have this meandering long thing that can then pay off in all these other ways by like 25 minutes in. You literally have to choose the scene in that moment. And it's funny, the choices that I made were really close to the things that 21-year-old Tiffany felt in that moment. So I felt like if I'm choosing the scenes that innately drove me or made me feel something when I was 21, then those are the scenes to include up in the front, because then then you are going with me. Then you yourself are understanding what's at stake, why it's something that drives this 21-year-old who barely speaks the language to jump on a plane and do that, but also packing in the weight of frustration in the family as well. The nonchalant, passive aggressive mother that clearly has these things. But so it's like, how do I allow the audience to have just even a snippet of the package that I had right off
Mm-hmm.
the bat because I won't have any other time. And how do I just jump there, get there, so that by like 6 minutes in, we're already looking for the, like we're there, you know?
Right, right.
So that's kind of the choices. But I have to tell you, there were like
A lot of
definitely
versions.
So Priscilla, so
Yeah.
you were saying that that was confusing. Like,
Yeah, I think it was it I think even, and like correct me if I'm wrong, Tiffany, but I think maybe we all felt it, but we really just needed that objectivity of, you know, someone like we had another editor come in later in the
mhm,
process and really help shape that. And maybe another challenge in the film is the different timelines. So there was
yes,
this 2005 like archival footage, but then there's also the 2019 footage, and it was later, like much later in the process, where it sort of became like the 2005 was the film, right,
yes,
Tiffany?
yeah.
yeah.
Which is so
It's so
interesting.
interesting. It's so interesting. I never thought it would be like that. And Mary Stephen was one of our story consultants, and she said like very, very quickly on, and when I showed her a cut, she's like, "Are you? I see what you're doing. You're scared of telling the actual story. Do you even want to make this movie?" She straight up said that to
Wow.
me, which was very Yoda of her. We worked together on the apology, and she likes to
Wow.
call things out like that. And she can totally like, and she's like 100% right. Like,
Yep.
and that's what I mean. Like sometimes as filmmakers, we have to kind of get out of our own way. But
For sure.
also, I think when people ask me my advice before they make a personal film, I'm like, ask yourself, are you ready to, and like, how ready are you to put yourself, your family, or the things out there? Because it could save a lot of time when you kind of know, but you really don't fully know until you're actually in it. And
Hmm.
then the choices that you make, you have to kind of be at peace with it.
Yeah.
Um, and it was hard. Like there was a lot of things that the process had brought up, a lot of forgiveness, forgiveness for
Yeah.
my mother, forgiveness for myself, forgiveness to the other women in our lives.
Mm.
And you don't,
I
I don't
I found
point it
myself
on
wondering
there.
about her siblings, I have to say. Like when she was like, "Oh, that's my sister," and you know, I wondered like how they were feeling with her coming back, and
Mhm.
yeah, I can imagine that unearthed quite a lot.
A lot, a lot.
And there was another portion that I thought was these are the two parts that always make me cry when your mom first hugs your grandmother and your grandmother like instantly goes into, you know, reflexive mom comforting child.
Mhm.
Um, and then when your mom is processing, like she finally hears the story, like what happened, you know, how come everybody else reunited with you but for me. um, and I thought to myself, you know, I think you and your mom were together on the playground, and she was like, you know, I can only imagine as a mother, you know, what that must have felt like. And I thought, man, like if they had reunited at a point where she hadn't had that empathy, it could have been a very different, could have landed
Totally.
differently. But your mom, as a mom, was able to, do you know what I mean? Have that empathy for her mother, and I just
Yeah,
thought that moment was so poignant. You know, her reflecting as a mother what her mother must have felt like in that moment.
absolutely. You know, and Opal, what's so funny in 2019, so a lot of things happened in terms of filming, was me actually having that conversation. And I think, you know, the camera, the film, the recording, the need to talk, mom, we need to talk now, like having an
Mm-hmm.
excuse to
Mhm.
record and ask these questions. um, I then realized, and I didn't know beforehand, that my mom actually had a choice to start her life all over again, when she divorced my dad. Like she was very young, she had so much going for her, you know, she had
Yeah.
a lot, and she had a
Mhm.
lot of dreams. And when they got a divorce, like she was my age, she was 36.
Mm-hmm.
And they all said, listen, leave the kids with Joe's family, my dad, leave them all, and you go start your life in California. You have family there, we'll all support you. So she had that choice. And she decided not to. She decided to raise us on her own, you know, single mom with 3 kids. And you heard that story that I talked about, you know, the
Yeah.
Christmas tree and everything. Like she did that because, and she told me, she's like, I couldn't do what was done to me. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't live with the idea that you guys would have that feeling like, where's mom? If I grew up with that, like that, just the cycle would continue, and I couldn't, that wouldn't be okay. When I
Right.
heard that, then it all kind of made sense to me in terms of just everything that she's done for us, but also kind of the way that she is too,
Yeah.
in the way that she shows her love. And also for me, the understanding of, you know, the importance of where we can appreciate our traditions and our cultures, but also where we can push back on some of the lines of like cycles, you know, that continue, secrets and shames and stuff like that. And so it
Absolutely.
made me adjust the story of like what I thought was shameful, you know, what I didn't know if I could put in there, you know, like and that's the thing, like I feel like there's so many different ways you could watch this movie and take away or relate to it, but in the end of the day, I don't want to say what was right or what was wrong or who was right or who was wrong. You know, at the end of the day, there are a lot of women here in the story that made tremendous sacrifices and gave a lot, you know. And when I first, I'm not, it wasn't 100% there in the film, but one of the vivid memories of my mom remembering someone leaving her lollipops at the playground fence. Like,
Yeah.
once my grandmother told me that, you know,
Oh,
like once my
wow.
grandmother told me that she had in fact seen my mom grow up this entire time, was like freaking crushing. It's just crushing to,
Did you have the lollipop story before your grandmother told you that? So you
no,
knew it's
so
oh,
I knew that my mom didn't know, but she told me all the things that she remembered, but she didn't have
okay.
the answer to it.
Right,
So
right.
being someone who knew the truth of the fragments that your mother carried, and then I wanted my mom to hear this all for herself and not be the
Right,
one that, you know, like my grandmother should tell you everything. Also, because
right.
my Mandarin was so bad, I was like, did I hear you correctly? Like so many things, like only now when I play back, I'm like, oh shit, you know, like these, oh, oops, I said the S word, I realized. I feel like this is like such an intimate conversation that like profanity will accidentally slip out. Sorry, Nicole.
No worries. I think the FYC crowd will be okay. um so how do you know when you've finished with a film like this? You knew you were making a short, right?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
how did you know? I mean, you had so much story to cover. Why not, be done at 20 minutes, or why not push it to, the most frequently recognized length of a short, about 40 minutes. Once you go past that, most places consider it a feature length.
Mhm.
How'd you know when, okay, we're done? And please, Priscilla, if you want to weigh in there too.
I'll just say I'm someone who likes I like to work within the constraints, and it helps just like manage. I think just for me, I think as a producer, I'm thinking about, execution, right? So
Mm,
I guess I'm not the best person to speak about the creative, but I think, you know, for me it's just like knowing those constraints helps you understand what the film is, I guess.
mhm.
But I think what's great about working with Tiffany is that she likes to push the constraints as much as possible. And then it's a conversation, and I think I'm all for supporting what the vision is. So I think
Yeah.
Tiffany, I mean, you should speak about when you felt like it was right, but I think it was a feeling, right?
I
Like I
think it
think.
was like when to say enough is enough. I mean, like I said, I locked the film like 5 different times. And in
Hmm.
each of those times that I locked, I do believe my grandmothers are with me, both my, whether biological blood adopted or grandmothers that I met from the
Yeah.
apology, there's just like an instinct that you know when something is done, and it's not from the approval of others, but really you're like your gut. The first time I locked, there was something that wasn't sitting right, like a gut feeling. And it was like, and I like had to tell everybody who like was like, guys, I'm opening up the movie again.
And like everyone thought we were done, but
yeah, everyone thought we were done, and everyone thought it was great and it was so beautiful and everything. But it was just like, no, there was, and the truth of it is that I really like, I have such a close relationship with my grandmother Opal from Toronto, you know, and the moment I was able to find a way to organically still honor her and the presence of her and what she had done for my mom, even though it might not have been this traditional maternal relationship, she was still the grandmother that we grew up with, that I grew up with, you know, that I had. And my grandmother in Taiwan, her sacrifice wasn't just for my mom, it was also for me too, for me to grow up with a grandmother like that, to have that, you know? And so I needed to find a way. And yes, it's very short. Like the film, it could have gone longer, 100%.
That
but
was beautifully done.
At the same time, like I said, I have lots of respect for short documentaries, because I think we're in a time right now where maybe people absorb content differently, shorter formats, shorter attention spans. I think that if you're able to be able to get content and make it more accessible out there, then we're reaching more people. And that's what I'm finding with now watching more and more short documentaries is like, wow, you can transport me within a half an hour. You know, and I'm baffled. And I think the craft is, you know, not known as well, but should be, and should be well recognized, that like you can pack in more and it can be just as strong and impactful and allow you to then continue the story within your own life and to see and reflect on that, which is why to tell you the truth, I started off making the short thinking this is the way that I was going to allow myself to process and research to one day make a feature-length scripted version of this story. So
it absolutely needs to be scripted.
Yeah. So
let's be clear. I remember the first time that I saw it, and it is the threads of, I mean, because this kind of an experience, because it's familial, there's like so many different, you know, perspectives that hold, you know, such an interesting color and richness to the story that you could explore. You know, at its heart, of course, it's a mother and daughter story through the generations. But you can't help but wonder about the aunties, you know, or dad, or, you know, it should absolutely be scripted. But back to the short documentary. You know, I do think that there's a potency to being able to, you know, tell such a sweeping, you know, I'll use the word epic because it's intergenerational, and that applies. In such a you know, nugget of time, and so I think it speaks to, you know, great artistic skill, and I'm just so glad that we are able to have Sing Me a Lullaby with us. Last question. I think I know the answer, but where's the title come from? We do get to see Grandma and Wendy reconnect through this song, but tell us in specific detail about Sing Me a Lullaby, the title.
Sing Me a Lullaby, a long title, which I know sometimes is not the greatest thing to have with a short film, but the title always was this. It always was this. In 2005, it was this. Like in my head, I was like, if I'm gonna make anything one day, it's gonna be Sing Me a Lullaby. It all actually started growing up and having, as we all know, you know, parents like to raise us to tell us to be grateful for the things that we have, whether it's like food on the table or shoes on our feet. And they would often reference what they don't have, which was like the epic story of my dad was like, you're lucky you have food. We had to split a hard-boiled egg amongst 5 kids. Or like my mom's like, you're lucky you have 2 pairs of shoes. I had one that I had to wear all year round. You're like, so these are the things that we typically grow up hearing these stories to feel gratitude, really. And one of the ones that really stuck with me was my mom has an incredible voice and singing voice, and she would always sing us these incredible lullabies, just incredible. Just often I like thought that she was moonlighting at night as like this singer. And you know, and sometimes when she was like upset with us or whatnot, when we wouldn't go to bed and we're just still messing around, she's like, you guys are so lucky, you have someone to sing you a lullaby to. Growing up, no one ever sang me a lullaby. And that became the thing, you know, like no one ever sang her lullaby. And so really sing me a lullaby. And, you know, it's funny when you look at this poster at the end, when we were even doing this print, none of the writing looked authentic to me. In the end, I got my mom to write it for me.
Wow.
By hand. And so
I love it.
That's Wendy's handwriting.
I love it.
I still have it here. This is her original handwriting.
That's so
that
brilliant.
Became the title of to be on the posters and all the print, because it's, for me, the title is her saying it. It's her journey, but it's through me. But that's why it became the title, and it became something that was throughout the 2005 journey, was something I asked strangers to do, which was to sing my mom a little lullaby, whatever lullaby that was. And so I'd have a collection of strangers across Taiwan singing little verses of lullabies. And it was a great conversational thing as well. They were like so fascinated by it. And I was like, yeah, my mom never had anyone sing her lullaby, so sing anything.
That's so precious.
It's precious. And I think that, I think the title is still very appropriate to today. And I think when I started doing research on even what lullabies, how they were even invented and what they were, it's actually a way for people to pass down their traditions, their culture through like rhymes, so that they could be remembered in case books or whatever were burnt or not like preserved. Like this was like
oral histories,
thousands. Like, we remember things by rhyme, and you do it with your children because those are the ones who will carry that on. And so if my mom never had anyone to sing her those things for her to pass on, that just it meant a lot. It meant a lot to her and to me.
That is a beautiful note to end our conversation on. Tiffany, Priscilla, thank you so much for joining us. And everyone, watch this film, tell your friends, sing me a lullaby. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Opal. Thank you.
Opal.